"You're too emotional to handle numbers, babe. That's why I brought in a professional," my husband said, gesturing to the woman sitting in my father's old office chair. He smirked as she adjusted her glasses. "Tiffany is going to manage your $2 million trust now. Just sign here and go back to your gardening." I looked at the professional who was wearing the perfume I found in my husband's car last week. I didn't scream or cry. I just picked up the pen because they had no idea that I had already made a very different phone call. My name is Tessa, and I'm 34 years old. For years, I've played the role of the quiet, supportive wife to Julian, a man who climbed the corporate ladder using my family's connections while treating me like I was barely literate. I'm a librarian by trade, a job Julian mocks as playing with dusty paper. But he forgot that librarians are experts at finding information that people want to keep hidden. My $2 million trust fund was left to me by my late father, intended to protect my future. But Julian saw it as his personal playground for his failing tech investments. I wasn't rich or glamorous, but I had something they didn't expect. I had the patience of a woman who has spent a decade cataloging every single one of his lies. I knew every password he thought was secret. I knew every bank he visited. Julian viewed my silence as ignorance, but it was actually my greatest strength. While he spent his days posturing in expensive suits, I spent mine learning the language of the law and the flow of money. My father always told me that the loudest person in the room is usually the weakest, and Julian was very loud. I was the one who actually understood the weight of our legacy. If you've ever been told you're not smart enough to handle your own life, hit that subscribe button. I want to hear your story in the comments. Let's prove them wrong together. I'm reading every single one. Click hype if you're ready to see the tables turn. Julian announced during dinner that he's removed the family's long-standing financial advisor and replaced him with Tiffany, a rising star in finance. The steak on my plate felt like lead as he spoke. Then Julian invites Tiffany over for a transition meeting in my own home, where they sit in my father's study and treat me like the maid, asking me to bring them coffee while they discuss my money. The room smelled of her floral perfume and his expensive cigars. It felt like a violation of a sacred space. "Don't worry your pretty little head about the dividends, Tessa," Tiffany says with a fake pout. "Julian told me how much you struggle with math. Just let the grown-ups talk." I tightened my grip on the silver tray. While serving the coffee, I notice a smudge of lipstick on Julian's collar that matches Tiffany's perfectly. I realize this isn't just a business move, it's a coordinated attempt to drain my inheritance to fund their new life together. Julian hands me a management agreement that essentially gives Tiffany power of attorney over my assets, claiming it's for tax purposes. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. They weren't just taking my money, they were trying to delete my existence. Every word they spoke was a lie wrapped in condescension. I walked out of the room quietly, the sound of their laughter echoing behind me like a funeral dirge. They thought they had won before the game even started.
I discover that Tiffany has already moved $200,000 into a high-risk holding company that is actually a shell account registered in her name. The greed was so obvious it was almost insulting. At a charity gala, Julian tells a group of our peers that I'm early-stage cognitively impaired to explain why he and Tiffany are now handling all my legal affairs. I watched our friends look at me with pity. It was a calculated move to isolate me. I come home to find that Julian has changed the security codes on my father's safe, where the original trust documents were kept, telling me I don't need to be rummaging through old papers. I felt like a prisoner in my own home. But I don't argue with them. Every time they insult me, I simply smile and take a mental note. I spend my nights at the library, using the high-speed scanners to digitize the evidence I've been gathering from Julian's trash for months. The smell of old ink and paper was my only comfort. I spent hours analyzing bank statements and forged signatures. I tracked their spending at luxury hotels and jewelry stores. Every receipt was a brick in the wall I was building around them. They thought I was sleeping, but I was working. They thought I was broken, but I was becoming dangerous. My eyes burned from the light of the computer screen, but my heart was cold and focused. I knew that the truth was buried in the fine print, and I was the best researcher Julian ever met. Julian always thought I was just reading late at night, but he never asked what I was reading or why I was so interested in the fine print of his corporate bylaws. He saw a wife with a book. I saw a roadmap to his destruction. I had a plan they never saw coming. What Julian didn't know was that my father didn't just leave me money. He left me a safety net that was triggered the moment a third party tried to seize control. He knew Julian's nature better than I did back then. I have a connection to a very influential person, a woman
An
named
old family
Sarah,
lawyer,
who is the
Mr.
CEO
Sterling,
of the
who
bank
knows
that
every
holds the
secret
trust.
my father
She
ever
was
had,
my father's
meets me in the back
protégé,
of the library.
and she's been waiting
We sat
for my
amongst
signal
the
to
dusty
freeze
stacks
everything.
where Julian would
Sarah
never
and
think
I
to look.
spoke in
He
hushed
reviews
tones
the shell
over
company
encrypted
documents I
lines
found.
while Julian
He's
was
been
out with
very
Tiffany.
sloppy,
We
Tessa,
mapped out
Sterling
every
whispered.
move.
Julian
We
and
waited for
Tiffany
him
grow
to commit a
incredibly
crime that was
arrogant. They start
undeniable.
openly discussing
I
their
held my
plans
breath
to move to a
every time
tax
he came
haven
home,
once the
acting
final
like the
$1.8
dutiful,
million is
confused
transferred.
wife he
I heard
wanted
them
me to be.
laughing about it in the
It was a
kitchen.
performance
Tension
that
builds
required
as
every
Julian
ounce of
schedules
my
a final
strength.
signing
I let him
ceremony
think
at our
he
home,
was the master
inviting
of
a
our
notary
house.
and a
I
few
let him think
witnesses
he
who were
was the
really
one
just
in
his
control
cronies
of the
to make the
$2
power of
million.
attorney official
All
and
the while,
permanent.
the
The
bank
air
was
in the
watching.
house felt
Sarah
heavy and
was ready.
electric.
The
The
forensic
day
team
before the
was
ceremony,
ready.
he
The only
cornered
thing
me in
missing
the hallway.
was the
He
final
tells me if
arrogant
I don't
push from
sign,
Julian
he'll have
that
me
would
committed
seal
for my
his fate.
mental health struggles using the fake medical notes Tiffany helped him forge. I looked into his eyes and saw nothing but greed. He really believed I was trapped. He thought he could use my own father's house as a prison for me. I just nodded and said I would be ready. I walked away, feeling the cold weight of the recordings in my pocket. Every threat was captured. Every lie was documented. The stage was set for his grand announcement, and I was going to be the one to lower the curtain. The final act took place at a partnership celebration Julian threw at a local club, intending to announce his new tech venture, funded by my trust. The club was dark, filled with the thumping rhythm of bass and the smell of expensive champagne. Julian stood on the small stage, looking triumphant. Just as Julian stands up to make the announcement, the doors open and Mr. Sterling walks in, followed by two forensic auditors and Sarah from the bank. The music cut out. The silence was deafening. I stand up and take the microphone from Julian's hand. Julian, you said I couldn't handle the numbers, but the numbers say you've stolen $200,000 from a trust that has a moral turpitude clause. His face went pale. Mr. Sterling presents the documents showing the shell company is directly linked to Tiffany's personal debt. Sarah announces that the trust was frozen 48 hours ago, and the signing Julian did was actually a trap to catch the notary's fraudulent stamp. The notary was actually a private investigator I hired. I look at Tiffany, who was trying to hide behind a pillar. The perfume was a nice touch, but the paper trail was even better. You're not a manager, you're a co-conspirator. Julian tried to speak, but no words came out. He looked at the auditors, then at the police officers who had just entered the room. His empire of lies vanished in a single breath. I watch as Julian and Tiffany are escorted out by security to meet the police waiting outside. They were led past very people they had tried to impress. The witnesses suddenly pretend they don't know who Julian is, turning their backs to avoid the scandal. I file for divorce and invoke the premarital fraud clause, ensuring Julian leaves with nothing but the clothes on his back. All the assets he tried to hide were clawed back by the court. Tiffany loses her license and faces years in prison for her role in the scheme. The house is mine. The trust is mine. Most importantly, my reputation is restored. I went back to the library the next day. The smell of old books greeted me like an old friend. The silence was finally peaceful, not oppressive. I sat in my favorite chair and opened a book, finally able to read without looking over my shoulder. I realized that my father had taught me how to be a librarian, not just for the books, but for my life. I know how to organize, how to verify, and how to protect what is valuable. Julian thought he was a shark, but he was just a small man who didn't understand the power of a quiet woman with a library card.
They thought because I was quiet, I wasn't listening. But in a library, you learn that the quietest people usually have the most information. I spent a decade being his shadow, but now I'm the one standing in the light. He thought he could steal my history, but he only ended up becoming a closed chapter in mine. I've realized that I don't need a manager or a husband who treats me like a child. I am the executor of my own destiny. My father's office is mine again, and the chair fits me perfectly. I've started using the trust to fund literacy programs in local libraries. It's exactly what my father would have wanted. The $2 million is safe, and so am I. If your family or someone you trusted ever took advantage of you financially because they thought you weren't smart enough to notice, you know how that feels. Subscribe and share your story in the comments. How did you find your voice? Click Hype to help this story reach others who have been underestimated. Your story matters, and I want to hear it. Standing up for yourself is tough. If you've been there, subscribe and become part of our community. Let me know this story helped by clicking Hype. And tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Would you like me to write an outline about a secret inheritance or a family business betrayal next? Your support means the world to me. We are building a community of people who refuse to be silent. I'm looking forward to reading your comments. Until next time, stay vigilant and keep your receipts. Good night.